Welcome to my Asshole Podcast. Let's get into it. All right. Today is a Thursday. Yes, we have our Thursday episode for today. And we'll be going over, according to Thorns and Roses, chapters 39 and 40. Well, man, we're flying through this book. We're almost done. If you remember in previous episode, Tuesday, I let you guys know that after this book, we are going to do Haunting Adeline book 2 after this book. So once this book is done, then that's where we're going to be going and heading to next. So hopefully you guys enjoy. We're going to get in today's thread before we do, though. Today's thread is a pretty interesting one. It's called, What's the Weirdest Thing You and Your Significant Other Do Together? So let's see what little weird things that you and your boyfriend/girlfriend do. All right, let's get into it. All right, we like to smush our faces on each other's with really wide eyes and say, "Can you see me now?" And then the other says no, and then one of us goes straight back to our normal voice and says, "Blind bitch, we have no idea how it came about. We just do weird stuff." All right. I mean, that's at the same time, that's kind of cute. You guys are kind of disgustingly cute out here. So, get on out of here. All right. As single people, we don't need you. We'll go to hold hands, but then turn it into a handshake like a business deal, then laugh maniacally and say, "You have no idea what you just agreed to." That's funny. My wife and I have a thing where we're in bed facing away from each other, and one of us will start wildly smacking their butt into others' butt repeatedly, but we call it butt sex. What the fuck? What? Oh my God. That is funny. When we argue about something stupid, one of us goes and gets 2 children's party hats from the kitchen, and we have to put them on to continue arguing. That's funny. I can imagine that, like getting into a dumb argument and then your guy just puts a party hat on you. Oh my God, I might steal that. That would be funny. Oh my God, if your girl is just arguing with you about some dumb shit, you just go into the kitchen, you grab a little party hat and you put it on her head. Oh my God, that would be hilarious. Oh my God, that would be so funny. It'd be the cutest thing ever, but it would be funny. Oh my God, just whenever she's fighting about some dumb shit, you just put a little party hat on her head and be like, "Are you done? You done now? Or you got some more to say?" Oh my God. That's funny. Oh, my wife starts talking about weird stuff or starts fantasizing about what might happen in an utterly impossible hypothetical situation. I start making whale sounds. I mean, okay. I mean, why don't you just lean into them? I would lean into the crazy ass hypotheticals. Like if she was just like, "Babe, what if you were at work and a big old gorilla came out of nowhere and just started throwing your coworkers all over the place?" And you know what I mean? I would lean into it. I'd be like, "Girl, what the fuck?" I would be finding anything and everything I can to throw at the monkey, and I'd be trying to get the fuck out of there. And then I'd be like, "Babe, what if a giant monkey came in, right? And he literally beat up and killed everybody, but then he talked to you and he was saying shit to you. Like, what would you do?" You know what I mean? Like, I would lean into that. Man, hypotheticals are cool, especially if your girl's coming up with them too. Like, girls don't do that. They don't come up with hypotheticals, Not any that I know anyway. I guess I know only boring chicks. I'll race into this room where he's working or playing with his phone, kiss him and sprint out again. That's adorable. That's adorable as hell. Why? That is something I didn't know I needed. You know, that's something I didn't know I wanted in a relationship. I'd love that. I'd love that if I'm just like chilling, you know, in my room or in the living room or whatever, and I'm just watching TV or playing games, and she just comes running in, gives me a kiss, and then runs away. I would just be like, that's adorable as shit. I would love her forever. God damn, man. You got you a good one. Once in a while, when going to hold the other person's hand, one of us will quickly change it into an actual handshake and say, congratulations, you are a wiener head. What the fuck? It's stupid. It started when our oldest kid, who was 4 at the time, said he came up with a new insult. It's been ongoing gag for at least 20 years. Wow. Damn. I mean, at least, you know, it came from their kid. Okay. We pretended to be on the show First Dates. When I got home after every evening together, one of us asked the main question, would you like to see each other again? And we proceed to sum up what we like about each other and why we would love to have a second date. I think couples need to do that more often. I really do. I think couples, because in my last relationship, I used to do that all the time. Like if we were in Target and she was like looking at something, I would just pretend to walk off, and then I would come back like as if I'm just some random dude hitting on her in Target, you know, and I'd just be like, hey, how's it going? Wow, you look really pretty. You know what I mean? And for her, that was like the biggest confidence booster ever, you know, because she's just like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Like he still sees me as he did the first time we met or the first time we got together. You know, for girls, they love that type of stuff. I think that needs to be a thing more often, you know, because I think it just shows it's a fun and quirky and flirty way to kind of show appreciation for your partner and that you still find them attractive, even now from, you know, the first time you met them. I like that idea though. He's my towel boy. Whenever I'm done with my shower, I call out towel boy. He'll drop everything and come running just to hand me a towel. Sometimes he'll even add in, here's your towel, ma'am, please. I need this job. I got a wife and kids to support. My towel is only ever a couple feet from the shower, but he insists on handing it to me every time. If I'm impatient and fetch my own towel, oh no, please ma'am, I really need this job, etc., etc., then I have to give him back the towel and step back into the shower and allow him to perform his duty as my towel boy. I love this bit and look forward to it every day. That's cute. That's cute. That is. I think that's almost like a version of just like opening the car door, opening a door. You know what I mean? You want to do something for your girl, you know, and it's very small. It's extremely minimal. You know what I mean? But it means the absolute world to her. Yeah, that's cute. We walk around big cities and find luxury hotels to use their bathroom and then rate the bathroom 1 out of 10. That's crazy. That's crazy, but I could see how that could be fun. You know what I mean? I could see how that could kind of be fun. And then I guarantee you they make TikToks doing that. Those TikToks would blow up. I ain't going to lie to you. You just walk around big cities and rate their bathrooms of luxury hotels and stuff like that. I can see that. I guarantee you. And if that's not a niche, I'm sure somebody's going to, you know, take that and run with it. My girlfriend decided the best way to wake me up is to tape my nose insistently. Then she decides to keep doing it whenever she wants to get my attention or is bored. Oh, to tap my nose. Oh, I'm sorry. I said tape. Tap my nose. She wants to get my attention or is bored and such. So if I want her to stop, my options where to dodge her or hold her hands down. We had a brilliant idea to get her to stop. I just started telling her she has a nose fetish, and I've started moaning every time she touches my nose, and it worked like a charm. That's funny. That is funny. I would let her do it. I don't care. I would think that's cute. You know what I mean? I think a lot of girls nowadays, or a lot of women, whatever, they're afraid of being cute. You know, like, I get it. We're in this boss babe era, and, you know, all women are like, oh, I gotta get mine, and I do me, da 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 da, don't need no man, blah 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 blah. But it's like, why? Be cute. That shit's great. I love that. I love that stuff. You know, like, I don't know. I just feel like girls don't like to dress cute. They don't like to act cute. They don't like to be cute anymore. They don't like to put like decorations in their hair. Like back in my day, I'm gonna whip out the cane of bifocals real quick. Back in my day, you know, girls love, and I think this is coming back, but I don't see it enough. But girls used to like to wear skirts. They used to like to wear dresses. They used to like to put bows in their hair. They used to like to put ribbons in their hair. You know, even when girls used to wear like the fake highlights, you know, where they put it like in their hair, and it was literally like a hair extension kind of thing, and it had a little clip on the end, and they would like put it up under their real hair, and it looked like, you know, it's like their natural hair, and then like a stripe of a color or something like that. It's like, what happened to all this? What happened? You know, like, girls used to be so cute, and they used to, you know, do cute shit, and they just don't anymore. It's like, I don't know, man. I'm just an old man with a cane and bifocals yelling into a microphone at this point. You know, times have changed. Why did change gotta happen? You know, goddamn, man. All right. We lift our t-shirts when we hug sometimes because warm belly on warm belly is the best feeling. He is a bit taller, so it can be tricky to get things right. Oh my god, what the heck? Oh, I thought she meant like he would put his shirt over her when like hugging. Yeah, because obviously he's taller than her, you know what I mean? That's what I thought she meant, but all right. Hey, do your thing. I'll lay down completely unmoving, legs and arms spread. He'll go, is that a cozy spot? No matter what he's doing, he'll come over and lay on the top of me, pretending not to realize it's me. Then I'll trap him in my legs and arms, and we call it the Venus flytrap. Oh my goodness. That's funny. Homing beacon. We live in a crowded city, and when we lose track of each other in stores and in the streets, we have a specific noise we make until we find each other. People looking at us like we're nuts. Whenever his work shirts get old and need to be thrown out, he puts them on, and we wrestle, and I tear the shirt to pieces. This started after a cosplay costume arrived for him that day, or that was way too small, and he put it on to try to tear it like he was the Hulk, but couldn't, so I helped. We also rescue pigeons. Okay, I don't know why you threw the pigeon part in there, but cool. You know, those little CIA agents. All right. If we're walking down the street and we pass someone talking to someone else, we'll wait until we're a little ways away and then reiterate the information to each other. Example, we pass by a girl who says, I don't know, I just wasn't really into him. So once we're out of earshot, I'll turn to her, or vice versa, and be like, she really wasn't into him apparently. Oh my god. I ain't gonna lie to you. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Me and my ex used to do that all the time. And people would look at us like, you know, because obviously we can hear you. We're not eavesdropping. We can fucking hear you. You're being loud as hell. And they would just be like so dumbfounded and surprised that, you know, we pick up on it and say something about it. That is the funniest thing to do. I love doing that shit just because some people just love putting their business out there. You know what I mean? It's just ridiculous to me. Like, some people just love putting their business out there. And it's like, what the fuck? I used to put googly eyes on my then girlfriend while she slept and waited for her to find them the next day to see if I could be so strategic that she'd go the whole day at work and not find some. I succeeded. One night I put a bigger one on her forehead after she dozed off, half used and would come off very easily, so the glue would and suction wouldn't have left a mark, and went to brush my teeth. Few minutes later, she came in, looks in the mirror, stares at the very groggily and dryly, okay, and says, "Why the fuck is there a googly eye on my head?" I laughed my ass off for a good several minutes straight. That's funny. It's funny because, like, I haven't seen a googly eye in so long. Man, it seems like as a kid, you play with googly eyes all the damn time. But then when you get an adult, you're just like, what are googly eyes? Same thing with like markers and crayons and all that kind of stuff. Like, yo, man, that's whew. Yeah, it takes your boy back. That's funny though that he got away with putting a googly eye on her for that long. That's funny. That is super funny. I would have put them in places where she kind of can't see them. Like I'd try to put them like on her stomach or on her back. Oh, that would be hilarious. Oh, especially if you went the whole day and like people could kind of see it out of her collar or something. Let me see. All right. When my husband and I have disagreements, we refer to ourselves as the delegation from state Y and the delegation from state X. Like a parliament or UN meeting, we are both from different states, so it's pretty clear cut. And by the end of it, we have to strike a deal in which both parties are satisfied for the good of our kingdom. We lay down facts from both sides, then feelings separately. It's a cheesy, but it makes us giggle, so disagreements are a lot easier to handle. And we both know where the fact/feelings line lies. I think that's a good way to have tough conversations. You turn it into a bit of a game and you kind of have fun with it. I like that. I like that a lot because obviously a lot of people kind of come at it at a serious angle and they're like, hey, I need to talk to you, instead of, they made it into a game. They're just like, delegate why? I need to have a meeting with you. You know what I mean? And they're able to just kind of talk about it and then kind of laugh about it at the end. Like, that was funny. Da, da, da. And it's not so bad. It's not so, like rooted in feelings, and they are able to just kind of put things out on the table, resolve them, and kind of move forward, but they can do it in a funny way. That's cool. I like that. All right. I'm going to cut the thread short. We'll probably just do 2 more of these, and then we'll hop into A Court of Thorns and Roses. When I'm laying next to my wife, all of a sudden, yell steamroller, and then proceed to roll sideways into her, then keep rolling on top of her. Then I'll stall out sometimes, but I'll keep rolling back and forth, and she dies laughing every time. That's adorable. That is adorable as fuck. You guys need to get out of here. Leave us alone, okay? We don't need your cuteness out here, all right? Fuck out of here. Okay, am I jealous? Maybe a little bit. All right, this is going to be our last one. When something bad or weird happens at work or in life, one of us will just lay on the kitchen floor and just give up. The other one will ask, so what's happening? Okay, sure. All right. I mean, whatever works, I guess. Like. All right. Hey, that's going to be the end of that thread. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys loved our little wholesome thread that we had going on today. Highlight some of the couples out there. You know what I mean? Fuck you, bitches. You guys go be happy somewhere else, okay? We don't need you here, okay? We're all about relationships falling apart over here, okay? I'm joking. All right, I'm hopping to announcements super quick, and then we're going to get into chapters 39 and 40, all right? Patreon.com/MyLandSoul Podcast, getting exclusive episode every single Friday, as well as being able to send in your scenarios to be featured on the Tuesday and Sunday shows, okay? If you're an audio listener, keep downloading the show. Appreciate all of the support that you guys have been showing, as well as rating the show 5 stars if you haven't already, all right? All of that helps, and guess what? It's completely free, and if it's faux free, it's faux me. If you want to help out even more on the free 99 side of things, go ahead and follow us on TikTok, Instagram, as well as YouTube, okay? All of the links are down in the description, as well as the links to catch up on A Court of Thorns and Roses to where we are now. If you want to go check out Haunting Adeline Book 1 before we start Book 2, go ahead and go over there. There's a playlist down there. There's a YouTube playlist as well as a Spotify playlist. So get on in there. Check that out. And if you are iffy on the Patreon and you want to kind of get a bit of a glimpse of what the Patreon is like, then go ahead and there is a Spotify as well as a YouTube playlist. Or no, I'm sorry. I think there's just a YouTube playlist. I think it's just a YouTube playlist. I'm not 100% sure. But I know there is a YouTube playlist. It is just audio only. But there is a YouTube playlist down there with all of the free Patreon day episodes that we've done so far, all the way from January to October. So check those out if you want to see, what Patreon is kind of like before you decide to, throw your hand in the cookie jar. Check it out. But without further ado, though, let's get into A Court of Thorns and Roses, chapter 39 and 40. All right. So let me go ahead and...
Chapter 39. From that point on, each morning and evening, a fresh, hot meal appeared in my cell. I gobbled it down, but cursed Reason's name anyway. Stuck in the cell, I had nothing to do but ponder Amarantha's riddle, usually only to wind up with a pounding headache. I recited it again and again and again, but to no avail. Days passed, and I didn't see Lucian or Tamlin, and Reason never came to taunt me. I was alone, utterly alone, locked in silence, though the screaming in the dungeons still continued day and night. When that screaming became too unbearable and I couldn't shut it out, I would look at the eye tattooed on my palm. I wondered if he'd done it to quietly remind me of Jurian. A cruel, petty slap to the face, indicating that perhaps I was well on my way to belonging to him, just as the ancient warrior now belonged to Amarantha. Every once in a while, I'd say a few words to the tattoo, then curse myself for a fool, or curse Reason. But I could have sworn that as I dozed off one night, it blinked. If I was counting the schedule of my meals correctly, about 4 days after I'd seen Reason in his room, 2 high-fae females arrived in my cell. They appeared through the cracks from slivers of darkness, just as Reason had. But while he'd solidified into a tangible form, these fairies remained mostly made of shadow, their features barely discernible, save for their loose, flowing cobweb gowns. They remained silent when they reached for me. I didn't fight them. There was nothing to fight them with and nowhere to run. The hands they clasped around my forearms were cool but solid, as if the shadows were a coating, a second skin. They had to have been sent by Reason, some servants of his from the night court. They could have been mutes for all they said to me as they pressed close to my body and we physically stepped through the closed door, as if it wasn't even there. As if I had become a shadow too. My knees buckled at the sensation, like spiders crawling down my spine, my arms, as we walked through the dark, shrieking dungeons. None of the guards stopped us. They didn't even look in our direction. We were glamoured then, no more than flickering darkness to the passing eye. The fairies brought me up through dusty stairwells and down forgotten halls until we reached a nondescript room where they stripped me naked, bathed me roughly, and then, to my horror, began to paint my body. Their brushes were unbearably cold and ticklish, and their shadowy grips were firm when I wriggled. Things only worsened when they painted more intimate parts of me, and it was an effort to keep from kicking one of them in the face. They offered no explanation for why, no hint of whether this was another torment sent by Amarantha. Even if I fled, there was nowhere to escape to, not without damning Tamlin further. So I stopped demanding answers, stopped fighting back, and let them finish. From the neck up, I was regal. My face was adorned with cosmetics, rouge on my lips, a smearing of gold dust on my eyelids, kohl lining my eyes. And my hair was coiled around a small golden diadem embedded with lapis lazuli. But from the neck down, I was a heathen god's plaything. They had continued the pattern of the tattoo on my arm, and once the blue-black paint had dried, they placed on me a gauzy white dress. If you could call it a dress, it was little more than 2 long shafts of gossamer, just wide enough to cover my breasts, pinned at each shoulder with gold brooches. The sections flowed down to a jeweled belt slung low across my hips, where they joined into a single piece of fabric that hung between my legs and to the floor. It barely covered me, and from the cold air on my skin, I knew that most of my backside was left exposed. The cold breeze caressing my bare skin was enough to kindle my rage. The 2 high fae ignored my demands to be clothed in something else. Their impossibly shadowed faces veiled from me, but held my arms firm when I tried to rip the shift off. "I wouldn't do that," a deep, lilting voice said from the doorway. Rhysand was leaning against the wall, his arms crossed over his chest. I should have known it was his doing. Should have known from the matching designs all over my body. "Our bargain hasn't started yet," I snapped. The instincts that had once told me to be quiet around Tam and Lucian utterly failed me when Rhysand was near. "Oh, but I needed an escort for the party." His violet eyes glittered with stars. "And when I thought of you squatting in that cell all night, alone..." He waved a hand, and the fairy servants vanished through the door behind him. I flinched as they walked through the wood. No doubt an ability everyone in the night court possessed, and Rhysand chuckled. "You look just as I hoped you would." From the cobwebs of my memory, I recalled similar words Tamlin had once whispered into my ear. "Is this necessary?" I said, gesturing to the paint and clothing. "Of course," he said coolly. "How else would I know if anyone touches you?" He approached, and I braced myself as he ran a finger along my shoulder, smearing the paint. As soon as his finger left my skin, the paint fixed itself, returning the design to its original form. "The dress itself won't mar it, and neither will your movements," he said, his face close to mine. His teeth were far too near to my throat. "And I'll remember precisely where my hands have been. But if anyone else touches you, let's say a certain high lord who enjoys springtime, I'll know." He flicked my nose. "And Feyre," he added, his voice a caressing murmur. "I don't like my belongings tampered with." Ice wrapped around my stomach. He owned me for a week every month. Apparently, he thought that extended to the rest of my life, too. "Come," Rhysand said, beckoning with a hand. "We're already late." We walked through the halls. The sounds of merriment rose ahead of us, and my face burned as I silently bemoaned the too sheer fabric of my dress. Beneath it, my breasts were visible to everyone, the paint hardly leaving anything to the imagination, and the cold cave air raised goosebumps on my skin. With my legs, sides, and most of my stomach exposed, save for the slender shafts of fabric, I had to clench my teeth to keep them from chattering. My bare feet were half frozen, and I hoped that wherever we were going would have a giant fire. Queer, off-kilter music brayed through 2 stone doors that I immediately recognized. The throne room. No, any place but here. Fairies and high fae gawked as we passed through the entrance. Some bowed to Rhysand while others gaped. I spied several of Lucian's older brothers gathered just inside the doors. The smiles they gave me were nothing short of vulpine. Rhysand didn't touch me, but he walked close enough for it to be obvious that I was with him, that I belonged to him. I wouldn't have been surprised if he'd attached a collar and leash around my neck. Maybe he would at some point, now that I was bound to him, the bargain marked on my flesh. Whispers snaked under the shouts of celebrating, and even the music quieted as the crowd parted and made a path for us to Amarantha's dais. I lifted my chin, the weight of the crown digging into my skull. I'd beaten her first task. I'd beaten her menial chores. I could keep my head high. Tamlin was seated beside her on that same throne, in his usual clothing, no weapons sheathed anywhere on him. Rhysand had said that he wanted to tell him at the right moment, that he'd wanted to hurt Tamlin by revealing the bargain I'd made. Prick. Scheming, wretched prick. "Merry Midsummer," Rhysand said, bowing to Amarantha. She wore a rich gown of lavender and orchid purple, surprisingly modest. I was a savage before her cultivated beauty. "What have you done with my captive?" she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Tamlin's face was like stone save for the white-knuckled grip on the arms of his throne. No claws. He was able to keep that sign of his temper at bay, at least. I'd done such a foolish thing in binding myself to Rhysand. Rhysand with the wings and talons lurking beneath that beautiful, flawless surface. Rhysand who could shatter minds. "I did it for you," I wanted to shout. "We made a bargain," Rhysand said. I flinched as he brushed a stray lock of my hair from my face. He ran his fingers down my cheek, a gentle caress. The throne room was all too quiet as he spoke his next words to Tamlin. "1 week with me at the Night Court every month in exchange for my healing services after her first task." He raised my left arm to reveal the tattoo, whose ink didn't shine as much as the paint on my body. "For the rest of her life," he added casually, but his eyes were now upon Amarantha. The Fairy Queen straightened a little bit. Even Jurian's eye seemed fixed on me, on Rhysand. "For the rest of my life." He said it as if it were going to be a long, long while. He thought I was going to beat her tasks. I stared at his profile, at the elegant nose and sensuous lips. Games. Rhysand liked to play games, and it seemed I was now to be a key player in whatever this one was. "Enjoy my party," was Amarantha's only reply as she toyed with the bone at the end of her necklace. Dismissed, Rhysand put a hand on my back to steer us away, to turn me from Tamlin, who still gripped the throne. The crowd kept a good distance, and I couldn't acknowledge any of them, out of fear I might have to look at Tamlin again, or might spy Lucian, glimpse the expression on his face when he beheld me. I kept my chin up. I wouldn't let the others notice that weakness, wouldn't let them know how much it killed me to be so exposed to them, to have Rhysand's symbols painted over nearly every inch of my skin, to have Tamlin see me so debased. Rhysand stopped before a table laden with exquisite foods. The high fae around it quickly cleared away. If there were any other members of the Night Court present, they didn't ripple with darkness the way Rhysand and his servants didn't dare approach him. The music grew loud enough to suggest there was probably dancing somewhere in the room. "Wine," he said, offering me a goblet. "Alice's first rule." I shook my head. He smiled and extended the goblet again. "Drink. You'll need it." Drink, my mind echoed, and my fingers stirred, moving toward the goblet. No, no. Alice said not to drink the wine here. Wine that was different from that joyous, freeing solstice wine. No, I said, and some fairies who were watching us from a safe distance chuckled. Drink, he said, and my traitorous fingers latched onto the goblet. I awoke in my cell, still clad in that handkerchief he called a dress. Everything was spinning so badly that I barely made it to the corner before I vomited. Again and again. When I'd emptied my stomach, I crawled to the opposite corner of the cell and collapsed. Sleep came fitfully as the world continued to twirl violently around me. I was tied to a spinning wheel going around and around and around. Needless to say, I was sick a fair amount that day. I'd just finished picking at the hot dinner that had appeared moments before when the door creaked and a golden fox face appeared, along with a narrowed metal eye. "Shit," said Lucian. "It's freezing in here." It was, but I was too nauseated to notice. Keeping my head up was an effort, let alone keeping the food down. He unclasped his cloak and set it around my shoulders. Its heavy warmth leaked into me. "Look at all this," he said, staring at the paint on me. Thankfully, it was all intact, save for a few places on my waist. "Bastard." What happened? I got out, even though I wasn't sure I truly wanted the answer. My memory was a dark blur of wild music. Lucian drew back. "I don't think you want to know." I studied the few smudges on my waist, marks that looked like hands had held me. "Who did that to me?" I asked quietly, my eyes tracing the arc of the spoiled paint. "Who do you think?" My heart clenched, and I looked at the floor. Did Tamlin see it? Lucian nodded. "Reese was only doing it to get a rise out of him." "Did it work?" I still couldn't look Lucian in the face. I knew, at least, that I hadn't been violated beyond touching my sides. The paint told me that much. "No," Lucian said, and I smiled grimly. What was I doing the whole time? So much for Alice's warning. Lucian let out a sharp breath, running a hand through his red hair. "He had you dance for him for most of the night, and when you weren't dancing, you were sitting in his lap." "What kind of dancing?" I pushed. "Not the kind you were doing with Tamlin on Solstice," Lucian said, and my face heated. From the murkiness of my memories of last night, I recalled the closeness of a certain pair of violet eyes that sparkled with mischief as they beheld me. "In front of everyone?" "Yes," Lucian replied, more gently than I'd heard him speak to me before. I stiffened. I didn't want his pity. He sighed and grabbed my left arm, examining the tattoo. "What were you thinking? Didn't you know I'd come as soon as I could?" I yanked my arm from him. I was dying. I had a fever. I was barely able to keep conscious. How was I supposed to know you'd come? That you even understood how quickly humans can die of that sort of thing. You told me you hesitated that time with the Naga. "I swore an oath to Tamlin." "I had no other choice. You think I'm going to trust you after everything you said to me at the manor?" "I risked my neck for you during your task. Was that not enough?" His metal eye whirred softly. "You offered up your name for me. After all that I said to you, all I did, you still offered up your name. Didn't you realize I would help you after that, oath or no oath?" I hadn't realized it would mean anything to him at all. I had no other choice, I said again, breathing hard. Don't you understand what Reese is? I do, I barked, then sighed. I do, I repeated, and glared at the eye in my palm. It's done with, so you needn't hold to whatever oath you swore to Tamlin to protect me, or feel like you owe me anything for saving you from Amarantha. I would have done it just to wipe the smirk off your brothers' faces. Lucian clicked his tongue, but his remaining russet eye shone. I'm glad to see you didn't sell your lively human spirit or stubbornness to Reese. Just a week of my life every month. Yes, well, we'll see about that when the time comes, he growled, that metal eye flicking to the door. He stood. I should go. The rotation's about to shift. He made it a step before I said, I'm sorry that she still punished you for helping me during my task. I heard... My throat tightened. I heard what she made Tamlin do to you. He shrugged, but I added, Thank you. For helping me, I mean. He walked to the door, and for the first time I noticed how stiffly he moved. It's why I couldn't come sooner, he said, his throat bobbing. She used our powers to keep my back from healing. I haven't been able to move until today. Breathing became a little difficult. Here, I said, removing his cloak and standing to hand it to him. The sudden cold sent gooseflesh rippling over me. Keep it. I swiped it off a dozing guard on my way in here. In the dim light, the embroidered symbol of a sleeping dragon glimmered, Amarantha's coat of arms. I grimaced, but shrugged it on. Besides, Lucian added with a smirk, I've seen enough of you through that gown to last a lifetime. I flushed as he opened the door. Wait, I said, Is Tamlin all right? I mean that spell Amarantha has him under to make him so silent. There's no spell. Hasn't it occurred to you that Tamlin is keeping quiet to avoid telling Amarantha which form of your torment affects him most? No, it hadn't. He's playing a dangerous game, though, Lucian said, slipping out the door. We all are. The next night, I was again washed, painted, and brought to that miserable throne room. Not a ball this time, just some evening entertainment. Which, it turned out, was me. After I drank the wine, though, I was mercifully unaware of what was happening. Night after night, I was dressed in the same way and made to accompany Rhysand to the throne room. Thus I became Rhysand's plaything, the harlot of Amarantha's whore. I woke with vague shards of memories, of dancing between Rhysand's legs as he sat in a chair and laughed, of his hands, stained blue from the places they touched on my waist, my arms, but somehow never more than that. He had me dance until I was sick, and once I was done retching, told me to begin dancing again. I awoke ill and exhausted each morning, and though Rhysand's order to the guards had indeed held, the nightly activities left me thoroughly drained. I spent my days sleeping off the fairy wine, dozing to escape the humiliation I endured. When I could, I contemplated Amarantha's riddle, turning over every word, to no avail. And when I again entered that throne room, I was allowed only a glimpse of Tamlin before the drug of the wine took hold. But every time, every night, just for that one glance, I didn't hide the love and pain that welled in my eyes when they met his. I had finished being painted and dressed, my gossamer gown a shade of blood orange that night, when Rhysand entered the room. The shadow maids, as usual, walked through the walls and vanished. But rather than beckon me to come with him, Rhysand closed the door.
"Your second trial is tomorrow night," he said neutrally.
The gold and silver thread in his black tunic shone in the candlelight. He never wore another color. It was like a stone to the head. I'd lost count of the days. So?
"It could be your last," he said, and leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms.
If you're taunting me into playing another game of yours, you're wasting your breath.
"Aren't you going to beg me to give you a night with your beloved?"
I'll have that night, and all the ones after when I beat her final task. Rhysand shrugged, then flashed a grin as he pushed off the door and stepped toward me.
"I wonder if you were this prickly with Tamlin when you were his captive."
He never treated me like a captive, or a slave.
"No, and how could he? Not with the shame of his father and brother's brutality always weighing on him, the poor noble beast. Perhaps if he'd bothered to learn a thing or two about cruelty, about what it means to be a true High Lord, it would have kept the spring court from falling."
Your court fell too. Sadness flickered in those violet eyes. I wouldn't have noticed it had I not felt it deep inside me. My gaze drifted to the eye etched in my palm. What manner of tattoo exactly had he given me? But instead I asked, "When you were roaming freely on Fire Night, at the Rite, you said it cost you. Were you one of the High Lords that sold allegiance to Amarantha in exchange for not being forced to live down here?" Whatever sadness had been in his eyes vanished. Only cold, glittering calm remained. I could have sworn a shadow of mighty wings stained the wall behind him.
"What I do or have done for my court is none of your concern."
And what has she been doing for the past 49 years, holding court and torturing everyone as she pleases? To what end? Tell me about the threat she poses to the human world, I wanted to beg. Tell me what all of this means. Why so many awful things had to happen.
"The Lady of the Mountain needs no excuses for her actions." "But the festivities await."
He gestured to the door behind him.
I knew I was on dangerous ground, but I didn't care.
"What do you want with me, beyond taunting Tamlin?"
"Taunting him is my greatest pleasure," he said with a mock bow. "And as for your question, why does any male need a reason to enjoy the presence of a female?"
"You saved my life."
"And through your life, I saved Tamlin's."
"Why?" He winked, smoothing his blue-black hair.
"That, Feyre, is the real question, isn't it?"
With that, he led me from the room. We reached the throne room, and I braced myself to be drugged and disgraced again. But it was Rhysand the crowd looked at, Rhysand whom Lucian's brothers monitored. Amarantha's clear voice rang out over the music, summoning him. He paused, glancing at Lucian's brothers stalking toward us, their attention pinned on me. Eager, hungry, wicked. I opened my mouth, not too proud to ask Rhysand not to leave me alone with them while he dealt with Amarantha, but he put a hand on my back and nudged me along.
"Just stay close, and keep your mouth shut," he murmured in my ear as he led me by the arm.
The crowd parted as if we were on fire, revealing all too soon what was before us. Not us, I amended, but Rhysand. A brown-skinned high fae male was sobbing on the floor before the dais. Amarantha was smiling at him like a snake, so intently that she didn't even spare me a glance. Beside her, Tamlin remained utterly impassive. a beast without claws. Rhysand flicked his eyes to me, a silent command to stay at the edge of the crowd. I obeyed, and when I lifted my attention to Tamlin, waiting for him to look, just look at me, he did not, his focus wholly on the queen, on the male before her. Point taken. Amarantha caressed her ring, watching every movement that Rhysand made as he approached. "The summer lordling," she said of the male cowering at her feet, "tried to escape through the exit to the spring court lands. I want to know why." There was a tall, handsome high fae male standing at the crowd's edge, his hair near white, eyes of crushing crystal blue, his skin of richest mahogany. But his mouth was drawn as his attention darted between Amarantha and Rhysand. I'd seen him before, during that first task, the High Lord of the Summer Court. Before he'd been shining, almost leaking golden light. Now he was muted, drab, as if Amarantha had leached every last drop of power from him while she interrogated his subject. Rhysand slid his hands into his pockets and sauntered closer to the male on the ground. The summer fairy cringed, his face shining with tears. My own bowels turned watery with fear and shame as he wet himself at the sight of Rhysand. "Please," he gasped out. The crowd was breathless, too silent. His back to me, Rhysand's shoulders were loose, not a stitch of clothing out of place. But I knew his talons had latched onto the fairy's mind the moment the male stopped shaking on the ground. The High Lord of Summer had gone still too, and it was pain, real pain and fear that shone in those stunning blue eyes. Summer was one of the courts that had rebelled, I remembered. So this was a new, untested High Lord who had not yet had to make choices that cost him lives. After a moment of silence, Rhysand looked at Amarantha. "He wanted to escape, to get to the spring court, cross the wall, and flee south into human territory. He had no accomplices, no motive beyond his own pathetic cowardice." He jerked his chin toward the puddle of piss beneath the male. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw the Summer High Lord sag a bit. Enough to make me wonder what sort of choice Rhys had made in that moment he'd taken to search the male's mind. But Amarantha rolled her eyes and slouched in her throne. "Shatter him, Rhysand." She flicked a hand at the High Lord of the Summer Court. "You may do what you want with the body afterward." The High Lord of the Summer Court bowed, as if he'd been given a gift, and looked to his subject, who had gone still and calm on the floor, hugging his knees. The male fairy was ready, relieved. Rhys slipped a hand out of his pocket, and it dangled at his side. I could have sworn phantom talons flickered there as his fingers curled slightly. "I'm growing bored, Rhysand," Amarantha said with a sigh, again fiddling with that bone. She hadn't looked at me once, too focused on her current prey. Rhysand's fingers curled into a fist. The fairy male's eyes went wide, then glazed as he slumped to the side in the puddle of his own waste. Blood leaked from his nose, from his ears, pooling on the floor. That fast, that easily, that irrevocably. He was dead. "I said shatter his mind, not his brain," Amarantha snapped. The crowd murmured around me, stirring. I wanted nothing more than to fade back into it, to crawl back into my cell and burn this from my mind. Tamlin hadn't flinched, not a muscle. What horrors had he witnessed in his long life if this hadn't broken that distant expression?
that control. Rhysand shrugged, his hand sliding back into his pocket. "Apologies, my queen." He turned away without being dismissed, and didn't look at me as he strode for the back of the throne room. I fell into step beside him, reining in my trembling, trying not to think about the body sprawled behind us, or about Claire, still nailed to the wall. The crowd stayed far, far back as we walked through it. "Whore," some of them softly hissed at him out of her earshot. "Amarantha's whore." But many offered tentative, appreciative smiles and words. "Good that you killed him. Good that you killed the traitor." Rhysand didn't deign to acknowledge any of them, his shoulders still loose, his footsteps unhurried. I wondered whether anyone but he and the High Lord of the Summer Court knew that the killing had been a mercy. I was willing to bet that there had been others involved in that escape plan, perhaps even the High Lord of the Summer Court himself. But maybe keeping those secrets had only been done in aid of whatever games Rhysand liked to play. Maybe sparing that fairy male by killing him swiftly, rather than shattering his mind and leaving him a drooling husk, had been another calculated move, too. He didn't pause once on that long trek across the throne room, but when we reached the food and wine at the back of the room, he handed me a goblet and downed one alongside me. He didn't say anything before the wine swept me into oblivion. Chapter 40. My second task arrived. Its teeth gleaming, the adder grinned at me as I stood before Amarantha. Another cavern, smaller than the throne room, but large enough to perhaps be some sort of old entertaining space. It had no decorations, save for its gilded walls, and no furniture. The queen herself only sat on a carved wooden chair, Tamlin standing behind her. I didn't gaze too long at the adder, who lingered on the other side of the queen's chair, its long, slender tail slashing across the floor. It only smiled to unnerve me. It was working. Not even gazing at Tamlin could calm me. I clenched my hands at my sides as Amarantha smiled. "Well, Feyre, your second trial has come." She sounded so smug, so certain that my death hovered nearby. I'd been a fool to refuse death in the teeth of the worm. She crossed her arms and propped her chin on a hand. Within the ring, Jurian's eye turned to face me, its pupil dilating in the dim light. "Have you solved my riddle yet?" I didn't deign to make a response. "Too bad," she said with a moo. "But I'm feeling generous tonight." The adder chuckled, and several fairies behind me gave hissing laughs that snaked their way up my spine. "How about a little practice?" Amarantha said, and I forced my face into neutrality. If Tamlin was playing indifferent to keep us both safe, so would I. But I dared a glance at my High Lord and found his eyes hard upon me. If I could just hold him, feel his skin for just a moment, smell him, hear him say my name. A slight hiss echoed across the room, dragging my gaze away. Amarantha was frowning up at Tamlin from her seat. I hadn't realized we'd been staring at each other, the cavern wholly silent. "Begin," Amarantha snapped. Before I could brace myself, the floor shuddered. My knees wobbled, and I swung my arms to keep upright as the stones beneath me began sinking, lowering me into a large rectangular pit. Some fairies cackled, but I found Tamlin's stare again and held it
until I was lowered so far down that his face disappeared beyond the edge. I scanned the 4 walls around me, looking for a door, for any sign of what was to come. 3 of the walls were made of a single sheet of smooth, shining stone, too polished and flat to climb. The other wall wasn't a wall at all, but an iron grate splitting the chamber in 2, and through it... My breath caught in my throat. Lucian. Lucian lay chained to the center of the floor on the other side of the chamber, his remaining russet eye so wide that it was surrounded with white. The metal ones spun as if set wild. His brutal scar was stark against his pale skin. Again, he was to be Amarantha's toy to torment. There were no doors, no way for me to get to his side except to climb over the gate between us. It had such thick, wide holes that I could probably climb it to jump onto his side. I didn't dare. The fairies began murmuring and gold clinked. Had Rhysand bet on me again? In the crowd, red hair gleamed, 4 heads of red hair, and I stiffened my spine. I knew his brothers would be smiling at Lucian's predicament, but where was his mother, his father? Surely the High Lord of the Autumn Court would be present. I scanned the crowd. No sign of them. Only Amarantha, standing with Tamlin at the edge of the pit, peering in. She bowed her head to me and gestured with an elegant hand to the wall beneath her feet. Here, Feyre darling, you shall find your task. Simply answer the question by selecting the correct lever and you'll win. Select the wrong one to your doom. As there are only 3 options, I think I gave you an unfair advantage. She snapped her fingers, and something metallic groaned. That is, she added, if you can solve the puzzle in time. Not too high above, the 2 giant spike-encrusted grates I'd dismissed as chandeliers began lowering, slowly descending toward the chamber. I whirled to Lucian. That was the reason for the gate cleaving the chamber in 2, so I would have to watch as he splattered beneath, just as I myself was squashed. The spikes, which had been supporting candles and torches, glowed red, and even from a distance I could see the heat rippling off them. Lucian wrenched at his chains. This would not be a clean death. And then I turned to the wall that Amarantha had gestured to. A lengthy inscription was carved into its smooth surface, and beneath it were 3 stone levers with the numbers 1, 2, and 3 engraved above them. I began to shake. I recognized only basic words, useless ones like the and but and went. Everything else was a blur of letters I didn't know, letters I'd have to slowly sound out or research to understand. The spiked grate was still descending, now level with Amarantha's head, and would soon shut off any chance I stood of getting out of this pit. The heat from the glowing iron already smothered me, sweat starting to bead at my temples. Who had told her I couldn't read? Something wrong? She raised an eyebrow. I snapped my attention to the inscription, keeping my breathing as steady as I could. She hadn't mentioned reading as an issue. She would have mocked me more if she'd known about my illiteracy. Fate. A cruel, vicious twist of fate. The chains rattled and strained, and Lucian cursed as he beheld what was before me. I turned to him, but when I saw his face, I knew he was too far to be able to read it aloud to me, even with his enhanced metal eye. If I could hear the question, I might stand a chance at solving it, but riddles weren't my strong point. I was going to be skewered by burning hot spikes and then crushed on the ground like a grape. The grate now passed over the lip of the pit, filling it entirely. No corner was safe.
if I didn't answer the question before the grate passed the levers. My throat closed up, and I read and read and read, but no words came. The air became thick and stank of metal. Not magic, but burning, unforgiving steel creeping toward me, inch by inch. "Answer it!" Lucian shouted, his voice hitched. My eyes stung. The world was just a blur of letters, mocking me with their turns and shapes. The metal groaned as it scraped against the smooth stone of the chamber, and the fairy's whispers grew more frenzied. Through the holes in the grate, I thought I saw Lucian's eldest brother chuckle. Hot, so unbearably hot. It would hurt. Those spikes were large and blunt. It wouldn't be quick. It would take some force to pierce through my body. Sweat slid down my neck, my back, as I stared at the letters, at the 1, 2, and 3 that had somehow become my lifeline. 2 choices would doom me. 1 choice would stop the grate. I found the numbers in the inscription. It must be a riddle, a logic problem, a maze of words worse than any worm's labyrinth. "Feyre!" Lucian cried, panting as he stared at the ever-lowering spikes. The gleeful faces of the high fae and lesser fairies sneered at me above the grate. 3 grasshoppers. The gate wouldn't stop, and there wasn't a full body length between my head and the first of those spikes. I could have sworn the heat devoured the air in the pit. Were, boo, bout, boon, king, sing, bouncing. I should just say my goodbyes to Tamlin, right now. This was what my life amounted to. These were my last moments. This was it. The final breaths of my body, the last beatings of my heart. "Just pick one!" Lucian shouted, and some of those in the crowd laughed, his brothers no doubt the loudest. I reached a hand toward the levers and stared at the 3 numbers beyond my trembling, tattooed fingers. 1, 2, 3. They meant nothing to me beyond life and death. Chance might save me, but... 2. 2 was a lucky number, because that was like Tamlin and me, just 2 people. 1 had to be bad, because 1 was like Amarantha or the Adder, solitary beings. 1 was a nasty number, and 3 was too much. It was 3 sisters crammed into a tiny cottage, hating each other until they choked on it, until it poisoned them. 2. It was 2. I could gladly, willingly, fanatically believe in a cauldron and fate if they would take care of me. I believed in 2. 2. I reached for the second lever, but a blinding pain racked my hand before I could touch the stone. I hissed, withdrawing. I opened my palm to reveal the slitted eye tattooed there. It narrowed. I had to be hallucinating. The grate was about to cover the inscription, barely 6 feet above my head. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The heat was too much, and metal sizzled so close to my ears. I again reached for the middle lever, but the pain paralyzed my fingers. The eye had returned to its usual state. I extended my hand toward the first lever. Again, pain. I reached for the third lever. No pain. My fingers met with stone, and I looked up to find the grate not 4 feet from my head. Through it, I found a star-flecked violet gaze. I reached for the first lever. Pain. But when I reached for the third lever, Reason's face remained a mask of boredom. Sweat slipped down my brow, stinging my eyes. I could only trust him. I could only give myself up again, forced to concede by my helplessness. The spikes were so enormous up close. All I had to do was lift my arm above my head and I'd burn the flesh off my hands. Feyre, please, Lucian moaned. I shook so badly I could scarcely stand. The heat of the spikes bore down on me. The stone lever was cool in my hand. I shut my eyes, unable to look at Tamlin, bracing myself for the impact and the agony, and pulled the third lever. Silence. The pulsing heat didn't grow closer. Then, a sigh. Lucian. I opened my eyes to find my tattooed fingers white-knuckled beneath the ink as they gripped the lever. The spikes hovered not inches from my head. Unmoving. Stopped. I had won. The grate groaned as it lifted toward the ceiling, cool air flooding the chamber. I gulped it down in uneven breaths. Lucian was offering up some kind of prayer, kissing the ground again and again. The floor beneath me rose, and I was forced to release the lever that had saved me as I was brought to the surface again. My knees wobbled. I couldn't read, and it had almost killed me. I hadn't even won properly. I sank to my knees, letting the platform carry me, and covered my face in my shaking hands. Tears burned just before pain seared through my left arm. I would never beat the third task. I would never free Tamlin or his people. The pain shot through my bones again, and through my increasing hysteria, I heard words inside my head that stopped me short. Don't let her see you cry. Put your hands at your sides and stand up. I couldn't move. Stand. Don't give her the satisfaction of seeing you break. My knees and spine, not entirely of my own will, forced me upright, and when the ground at last stopped moving, I looked at Amarantha with tearless eyes. Good, Rhys told me in my head. Stare her down, no tears. Wait until you're back in your cell. Amarantha's face was drawn and white, her black eyes like onyx as she beheld me. I had won, but I should be dead. I should be squashed, my blood oozing everywhere. Count to 10. Don't look at Tamlin, just stare at her. I obeyed. It was the only thing that kept me from giving in to the sobs trapped within my chest, thundering to get out. I willed myself to meet Amarantha's gaze. It was cold and vast and full of ancient malice, but I held it. I counted to 10. Good girl. Now walk away. Turn on your heel. Good. Walk toward the door. Keep your chin high. Let the crowd part. One step after another. I listened to him, let him keep me tethered to sanity as I was escorted back to my cell by the guards, who still kept their distance. Rhys's words echoed through my mind, holding me together. But when my cell door closed, he went silent, and I dropped to the floor and wept. I wept for hours. For myself, for Tamlin, for the fact that I should be dead and had somehow survived. I cried for everything I'd lost, every injury I'd ever received, every wound, physical or otherwise. I cried for that trivial part of me, once so full of color and light, now hollow and dark and empty. I couldn't stop. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't beat her. She won today, and she hadn't known it. She'd won. It was only by cheating that I'd survived. Tamlin would never be free, and I would perish in the most awful of ways. I couldn't read. I was an ignorant human fool. My shortcomings had caught up with me, and this place would become my tomb.
I would never paint again, never see the sun again. The walls closed in, the ceiling dropped. I wanted to be crushed. I wanted to be snuffed out. Everything converged, squeezing inward, sucking out air. I couldn't keep myself in my body. The walls were forcing me out of it. I was grasping for my body, but it hurt too much each time I tried to maintain the connection. All I had wanted, all I had dared want, was a life that was quiet, easy. Nothing more than that. Nothing extraordinary. But now... I felt the ripple in the darkness without having to look up, and didn't flinch at the soft footsteps that approached me. I didn't bother hoping that it would be Tamlin. Still weeping? Rhysand. I didn't lower my hands from my face. The floor rose toward the lowered ceiling. I would soon be flattened. There was no color, no light here. You've just beaten her second task. Tears are unnecessary. I wept harder, and he laughed. The stones reverberated as he knelt before me, and though I tried to fight him, his grip was firm as he grasped my wrists and pried my hands from my face. The walls weren't moving, and the room was open, gaping. No colors, but shades of darkness, of night. Only those star-flecked violet eyes were bright, full of color and light. He gave me a lazy smile before he leaned forward. I pulled away, but his hands were like shackles. I could do nothing as his mouth met with my cheek, and he licked away a tear. His tongue was hot against my skin, so startling that I couldn't move as he licked away another path of salt water, and then another. My body went taut and loose all at once, and I burned, even as chills shuddered along my limbs. It was only when his tongue danced along the damp edges of my lashes that I jerked back. He chuckled as I scrambled for the corner of my cell. I wiped my face as I glared at him. He smirked, sitting down against a wall. I figured that would get you to stop crying. It was disgusting. I wiped my face again. Was it? He quirked an eyebrow and pointed to his palm, to the place where my tattoo would be. Beneath all your pride and stubbornness, I could have sworn I detected something that felt differently. Interesting. Get out. As usual, your gratitude is overwhelming. Do you want me to kiss your feet for what you did at the trial? Do you want me to offer another week of my life? Not unless you feel compelled to do so, he said, his eyes like stars. It was bad enough that my life was forfeited to this Fey Lord, but to have a bond where he could now freely read my thoughts and feelings and communicate. Who would have thought that the self-righteous human girl couldn't read? Keep your damned mouth shut about it. Me? I wouldn't dream of telling anyone. Why waste that kind of knowledge on petty gossip? If I'd had the strength, I would have leaped on him and ripped him apart. You're a disgusting bastard. I'll have to ask Tamlin if this kind of flattery won his heart. He groaned as he stood, a soft, deep-throated noise that traveled along my bones. His eyes met with mine, and he smiled slowly. I exposed my teeth, almost hissing. I'll spare you the escort duties tomorrow, he said, shrugging as he walked to the cell door. But the night after, I expect you to be looking your finest. He gave me a grin that suggested my finest wasn't very much at all. He paused by the door, but didn't dissolve into darkness. I've been thinking of ways to torment you when you come to my court. I'm wondering, will assigning you to learn to read be as painful as it looked today? He vanished into shadow before I could launch myself at him. I paced through my cell, scowling at the eye in my hand. I spat every curse I could at it, but there was no response. It took me a long while to realize that Rhysand, whether he knew it or not, had effectively kept me from shattering completely.
All right. That was chapters 39 and 40. Hope you guys have enjoyed those 2 chapters. I'll see you guys next week. If you're on Patreon, I'll see you tomorrow. If not, I will see you on Sunday for another glorious episode. Without further ado, though, I'm going to get out of here. This has been My Last Podcast. Peace.